Would you like to be somebody who understands why you should live like a crane? Then listen to the end of this video where I explain how the bird, the crane, tends to eat until it is only 80% full. And when we always achieve things in life, when we reach that 100%, often we're not as satisfied, and actually the journey of getting to that 100%, sort of almost being there, feels better than actually achieving it. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, or how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. Okay, so recently I met an individual who teaches Buddhism, and he gave me some advice. He said, we should live like cranes, or it's good to eat like a crane, only until you're 80% full. Now, why? And I think this is the reason. By the way, a crane is a kind of bird. It is sort of has very thin legs and has a sort of tend to be quite skinny, but with a large, broad wingspan. Okay, so here's reason number one. I think we should live like a crane. When we're permanently in the process, so 80%. If you say you eat until you're 80%, it kind of means you're not at the goal. You're not at the full 100%. So we could compare this to think then, well, okay, if we live at 80%, we're sort of permanently in the process and we're not living a life in a way that always gets us what we want. It's not like the easy route. I mean, anyway, life has natural barriers that prevent you from giving you everything you want, like fortune or fame or success of any kind. There's always kind of barriers. So it's not like you would need to restrain yourself from getting it. It's already there, the barrier. But it's like the 80% is you're kind of living in a way that you're not always getting what you want. And I noticed that how the journey in life of, working towards something is often more fulfilling than actually arriving at the destination. So for example, when you achieve your goal, I often reflected that the goal does not actually, let's say, fulfill your expectations. It's not as good as you thought it would feel. That's one thing, and that's of course disappointing. And second of all, once you've reached a goal, then you need to find a new goal, because the goal gives you a purpose in life. It gives you a narrative that characterizes your life and something you actually live for. You're working for something. But once that is achieved, well, you kind of have nothing really to work for anymore. And that's quite frightening, because then you need to find a new thing, which is first of all difficult, and it's also anxiety provoking, because you're kind of scrambling around and questioning, well, why am I alive? And you have sort of no purpose to live for, and that's difficult because life is tough. And if you have nothing to live for, nothing that's worth living for, you still have the difficulty, the challenge, the dissatisfaction in life, the suffering, but nothing that sort of justifies it. That's difficult. So for example, would be when you go to university to study, you're working towards a diploma. And I noticed that the years of studying actually were far more, pleasurable and fun, exciting. They were, there were escapades, there were, it was more spicy. But once I actually got the diploma, I mean, the amount of sort of marginal utility it brought me, or in my mind, at least in my sort of my emotions and mood, was close to none. I mean, I just got it, and then that was kind of it. Yeah. So the 80% of eating until you're 80% full is just representative of being in the process towards achievement, and instead of actually being at the pinnacle of your goal or the achieving the actual goal. So it's like this binary. It's kind of like this variable. You're either at the goal, you've achieved it, or you're in the process of getting to it, and you want to be in that process of getting to it. Okay, second reason why we should live like cranes is the food tastes better when you eat it until your stomach is only 80% full. When you stuff yourself until you are at the brink of, exploding, you feel sort of gross and you don't feel good, and the food is spoiled because you overconsumed it. And I think that the equivalent principle is valid in life. When you get too much of something, the value of it somehow it it sort of depreciates, it diminishes. Whereas when you consume, or you have access to a limited degree of something, you know, with a sort of ceiling, the amount of pleasure or value you get is optimal. It is, the value delivered is optimal in some sense. It's the sweet spot. Whereas if you get too much of it, it is spoiled. It's just kind of, it's an overkill in some sense. So for example, things might be, what I've reflected for myself is hanging out with friends. If I'm around my friends for too long at once, eventually I just get annoyed and bored, not bored, but just sort of exhausted. It's too much for me, and the optimal point has been exceeded and now it's going down again. Or buying things. If you buy too much of something, you're overwhelmed by the quantity that you've acquired, and it kind of, I don't know why, maybe you cannot grasp the value of what you've just acquired, but it's too much to handle. So the value delivered to you is sort of destroyed in some sense. And of course, as I said, eating food, you know, when you eat too much, you just feel, you don't feel good, and it kind of, even the food tasted good, the experience of eating it is ruined. It is spoiled because your body got what it thought it wanted, but not what it needed. And I also think this has to do, this principle of eating until you're only 80% full, has to do with longevity. I think if you always get everything you want, I think you begin to potentially slack on discipline and hard work, and your ability to play difficult, challenging games decreases because your threshold or your resilience to challenge and these barriers that are preventing you from getting what you want, the ability to overcome these barriers goes down because you have set up this habit of receiving everything you desire. And then you build this sort of, I think, attitude of entitlement where you think, I deserve these things, and if I'm not getting them, then something's wrong with the game, and I don't want to play this game. And you get a sort of a bit resentful, as if you've been dealt a bad hand, and the game is rooted against you, perhaps. And there's just this longevity also with your biology. If you eat too much, if you consume too much, I think your body depreciates faster than if you'd only eat until you're 80% full. Why would that be though? Well, I think it's a condition of your body. You know, if you consume too much, it can't handle it. It's not constructed to handle this overconsumption. Hence, it has to pay a price for over-consuming, I would say. So in conclusion, the reason why it might be beneficial to live like a crane is because a crane only eats until it is 80% full. And that is, you know, has utility for us in everyday life, because the 80% represents being in the process of getting towards a goal but not achieving it. And that often feels better to be in the journey of achievement instead of actually at the point of the experience of fulfilling and actually achieving the goal. Now, this doesn't mean, you know, you should pick a goal that is impossible to achieve. That's not it. But one should choose goals that will sort of occupy you for a very long time. And you could also formulate goals in ways that you achieve them without achieving them. For example, the classic example I use to explain to people is, you might choose the goal of, I want to reduce poverty. You can actively do that. And if you have some self-confidence and self-esteem, you can tell yourself, you know, I dedicated these 40 years of my career to reducing poverty. I made a big change, but of course I didn't achieve it. And because I never achieved it, as in to eradicate poverty, I was always in the process of it, and I never reached that 100%. I was always in the 80%. And generally, when you overconsume things in life, the overconsumption kind of spoils the thing you were consuming, whether it's food, buying things, or also experiences. You know, if you go on awesome vacations every month for years, obviously you're sort of, you expect this level of pleasure and awesomeness, and your gratitude to, or your appreciation for these wonderful experiences goes down, because you begin to lose the value. You begin to lose grasping the value of these vacations, for example. So please leave a comment below what you think about this idea that we should live like cranes and only eat or live our lives to 80% instead of 100%. Now that does not mean, when I just said that does not mean one should not give 100% effort. It just means one should not consume at a 100%. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.